All right, welcome back to the South Florida Mortgage Report. I'm your hat dude wearing mortgage guy, Billy May, always joined with Craig A. Garcia, president of Capital Partners Mortgage. And we've got a special guest today. And usually we talk about a handful of things. We talk about rates, and it's the end of the week, and the Freddie Mac survey came out, and rates kind of trending downwards. So looking good for rates, and then we're coming up on the spring home buying season. So that's all good stuff. But let's focus on our guest this morning, a special guest. It's Andrew Sesta. Now, Andrew is a realtor in the Treasure Coast area, the Kai's company, the office in Stewart, downtown Stewart by Confusion Corner, for those of you that know that area. But the Treasure Coast really is defined. It's a large swath area, and for those of you around for not familiar with, years ago, all these sunken ships came up, sunk in that area. And Mel Fisher, I think, has a museum right in that area, if I'm not mistaken, right,
Yep.
Andrew?
Yep.
But your market is pretty much the Treasure Coast, but you're saying you're kind of defined in a way as like your focus is pretty much Fort Pierce to Hobe Sound. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Again, Treasure Coast encompasses all of it, Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie. But when we talk about it in a real estate perspective, because of the MLS is different in Indian River than it is in Martin and St. Lucie, there's kind of like a breaking point. So when we talk about, Treasure Coast real estate, we're mainly talking about Fort Pierce to Hobe Sound.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And you've been a successful realtor in the area for over 20 years. You've got a team, right? I mean, you've
Yep.
closed over 1,000 transactions, and are you kind of 50-50 between listings and buyers? And you've got a team of people with you, right?
Yeah, I have a team of people. We do buyers, sellers, rentals. We're kind of a full service real estate sales team. We also this year just started doing some property management, short term rentals in a specific community called Ocean Village, right in Fort Pierce. It's
Oh,
kind of like
yeah.
a,
I did a load there about a year ago. That's a great,
yeah, it's
just south of the
great.
inlet, right?
Yeah, just south of the inlet. It's like a resort style condo living. I
Yes.
bought a condo there last year with the help of Craig, and
Is it on the
I've been
golf course?
Yeah, I'm right on the 8th hole, actually. So, it's a great location, and I love it so much, and there was so much, need for, property management in there that we decided to start doing that, and that's been going very well also.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know you've got a team of people. You're very successful. You're very driven, and you have a background in law enforcement. And so let me ask you, law enforcement, is that kind of help you in the way you coach and the way you kind of perform? And also, second part of the question is, what separates you from other agents in your area? Why are you successful?
I think I think what makes me successful is the dedication and the drive that I have, and I attribute that to my law enforcement background. I mean, there's a lot of discipline, just like I don't know if you guys were in the military before, but
I was.
it's okay, so you understand, it's kinda like a paramilitary type environment where, you had to perform a certain way, you had to look a certain way, you had to act a certain way, and, if it's, that old adage that, if you could be late, you could be 15 minutes early. I mean, we had to be at work 30 minutes before our shift started, even though we didn't get paid for it, but if you weren't there at that time, you got in trouble. So, I started when I was, believe it or not, I wasn't even 19 years old. I was 18 and a half when I started working at the sheriff's department. So it kind of gave me that discipline that I really needed as a young adult. I came from a disciplined background, Sicilian American family. So my dad was always one of those strict guys. This taught me a worth ethic that I don't think a lot of people have nowadays. So I really attribute that to, that time frame.
Yeah, I think you and I share some similarities here. So I get it. Came from an Italian American family myself, served in the military, and I get it. And that's one of the things that drives me too. Is that, you want to be disciplined, you want to be on time. Your yes is yes, your no is no. You want to be very,
Correct.
very clear.
Yeah.
I understand where you.
And the other thing is there's no gray. It's everything is either black or white.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like everything is kind of on that point where, you got to do things the right way, and that's the only way. It wasn't like, well, we could get away with doing it this way or that way. No, it wasn't like that. You is very disciplined, the work that you had to do, the time frames that you had to do them in. So I think that that really helped me throughout my whole life until this day.
So let me ask you, like, oh, go ahead, Craig. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and I was just really, I was excited to be on with you, Andrew. We've had a long-standing relationship and been through a lot of transactions together. And I can just tell you, as an outsider looking at you, the way you do your business, you know, I, I would say that, one thing about it, what I would describe Andrew as is definitely a driver, in terms of getting his deals closed. I mean, he knows all the different things that have to get done. They need to get done now, and he's constantly kind of driving the deal forward. And very tenacious and persistent and disciplined. So yeah, no, I mean that's just what I've observed in our
Right.
interactions over the years.
And Craig, you've known Andrew for how long?
11 years,
Probably
about 11
15,
years?
16 years. I mean, maybe, I think it's more, but,
Could be. Yeah,
yeah, I
could
think
be.
it's more than that. So yeah, it's been quite a while. And on that topic, I mean, Andrew, what in terms of like your regular disciplines, right? I mean, what are some like non-negotiables that you do on a daily basis in your business
I'm so
that,
glad so
yeah.
glad you asked that because today is one of the sacred days that I actually broke that discipline just for you. Um, yeah, so I learned very early on that time blocking, especially in this type of business, is huge. So I took a couple of classes when I first started, and they were really honed in on time blocking, and I do that to this day. So Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 is my prospecting time, my time to make my phone calls, expired calls, whatever it is as far as prospecting. So I don't make any appointments before 11 o'clock. Those my 9 to 11 is a non-negotiable. So if you say, Andrew, I want to see a house at 9 o'clock, you're not going to see Andrew at 9 o'clock. You may see one of my teammates at 9 o'clock, but you're not going to see me because I have to be here. Even, my own company, Kai's, that does events early, even if it's an awards thing. I haven't been to an awards ceremony in about 3 years. Not that I'm not getting them. I do get, one of the top agents, but, they have it at 11 o'clock in Palm Beach. I'm not going to be there because I'm prospecting. So that's how disciplined I am when it comes to, adhering to my plan, my schedule, because I've learned that if I don't do that, I never get back to the phones to do what I need to do and bring the business in, if that makes sense.
It's tough. It's tough to keep that discipline.
It is, because next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock at night and people are eating dinner and you don't want to start bothering people. So I'm very disciplined in that when it comes to, my schedule. I'm old school with the new school twist. I always say it like I still have my planner. I carry it with me everywhere. Everything is in here as well as it is digitally, but I have to have this book with me for all my notes and my appointments and that kind of stuff. So again, discipline, and the other thing that I'd like to talk about is systems and processes. That's where I think a lot of people go wrong in the real estate world is that they wing everything. You know what I mean? There's no checklist. There's no, again, going back to my days as law enforcement, there's a checklist for everything. There's a policy and procedure for everything. I actually have a policy and procedure for every step of our business. When you're working with buyers, when you're working with sellers, I have a checklist when things go under contract. I have a timeline that we create for each and every transaction that when it goes under contract, from contract to close, everybody in the transaction is getting text messages, emails, about the time frames and the critical dates that we need to hit. So it's those processes that make the transaction go so much smoother than if we were just winging it. And I find that happens a lot with agents in this business.
So let me ask you then, you talked about kind of like you have these processes in place and you want to control the process. Where do most agents lose control of the transaction? It sounds like you got a checklist in place. You're on top of everything. Where do you see other agents? Maybe they're on the listing side, you're on the buyer side, and you've got all your timelines, and this other agent you're working with is not doing. Like, where do they lose their focus, and what do you guys do to keep on track?
Well, again, we have systems in place to remind everybody for anything. For example, if I have a listing under contract and I'm working with a brand new buyer's agent that doesn't know what he's doing, and there's a lot of them out there, especially with these type of online real estate companies that have no training or anything, they're getting the text messages and emails telling them what they need to do to stay on track for the transaction. So I think that a lot of agents don't have a process in place or some kind of game plan to say, okay, the inspections do this, and what do I do next? And then next, and next, and next. So I think that that's where they go wrong, is the fact that they don't. I mean, these things are repeatable. I mean, every
Sure.
transaction, has got its own nuances, but you're still going through the same steps. You know what I mean? You got 5 days to do the application per the contract. You have X amount of days to do a home inspection, X amount of days for the loan commitment. It's not a surprise when that loan commitment's due, but I could tell you that, you call an agent and say, you know what, loan commitment's due tomorrow. Oh, really? Like they don't even know. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They don't even know that they're on what they wrote on the contract. So with the systems that we have in place, it keeps them in the know because they have no choice.
Now, let me ask you a question, because you touched on something that they're being notified. The other part, when you have you're doing a deal with somebody else, they're always being notified. Are you doing that, or do you have a transaction coordinator who does that, or how do
Yeah,
those?
I have a well, I have an administrative assistant that does the transaction
Got it.
coordination. So on my team, the way it works is the agent gets it under contract, turns it into her, and then she handles it from contract to close. They're not totally out of the picture. They're still working with the client, but she's coordinating them and telling them, okay, your inspection's due. Go ahead and set that up. We need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. So she's kind of guiding them along the process. That's why, for a new agent, it's kind of great because we kind of walk them through the whole transaction. But even with our experienced agents, it's great because they don't have the headache of worrying about all that stuff. It's done for them. So in turn, they could go out and sell more real estate because they're not behind a computer sending or calling the lender or, the appraiser or the title company. She's handling.
Excellent. Very cool. Part of another thing too is part of a team, talk about controlling the process. And you've worked with us, Capital Partners Mortgage, for a number of years, and I'm sure you have your preferred vendors that you work with.
Absolutely.
What's the difference between working with a lender who's just approved? When a buyer comes to you and they're like, "Hey, I'm already pre-approved by XYZ Mortgage." How do you handle that, or how can you recommend us, or how do you take control of the transaction?
Well, first of all, what I do is I get the information that they have from their lender and their pre-approval, and I'll call the lender and I'll question the lender. What have you done so far? What kind of paperwork do you have? I try to kind of get into their brain and figure out what did they just give us just a pre-approval just to get us on going, or did they actually do the work that needs to be done? 9 times out of 10, they checked the credit and they gave them a pre-approval. They have no idea if this deal is even gonna work or not. So that's when I sit down with the client and I explain to them the difference between a pre-approval, which is just a piece of paper, or a pre-approval that that the chances of you closing are a lot greater than just a guess, and that's what they're doing. A credit score, as we all know, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it really does. There's a lot of other aspects that go in it. And it's like some of those big box, I won't mention names on here because I don't know if you do that, but I get a pre-approval from XYZ that they didn't pull anything but the credit. So they don't
Right.
know anything about that client. I work almost exclusively with capital partners. And one of the big reasons is that when they pre-approve someone, they actually pre-approve someone. They pull the credit, they asking questions, they want documents so that they can actually tell the person, yes, I could do this, or I may be able to do this, but this is going to be our issues that we have to work on to make it happen. Or I'm sorry, we can't do this right now, but maybe if we do, step 1, 2, and 3 in 6 months, we can get you ready for it. So I look for partners that go above and beyond, not just those that are just going to give a piece of paper so that we can go out and show property, put it under contract. Then the buyer has the expense of a home inspection, an appraisal, only to find out that they're, a student loan or something comes up and that they should have known in the beginning.
Sure.
So we don't have those problems, thank God. First off, knock on wood, and also
Right.
thankfully that we work with a company that takes their job seriously.
So with kind of expanding on that, I was going to say my next question is, if you have someone comes to you and say they have a pre-approval from a lender that or whatnot. I mean, how do you say, hey, would you like to get a second opinion? Or I mean, I know you kind of call the lender, and even if you got a good opinion from that lender, would you still say, hey, would you like to get a second opinion? And
Sure, sure. Just like anything else. I mean, when you shop for a car, you shop around. When you shop for TV, you're looking at different ads and different sales. Well, when you're shopping for the biggest purchase you'll probably make in your lifetime, doesn't it make sense to look out, try to talk to 2 or 3 other people? You may get someone that's better than the person that I gave you, which is great. So let's get those numbers and let's compare them together, get a good faith estimate from each one of them, and then we could sit down and figure out for you which is best for you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, again, it's I take my job so serious. I mean, this is one of the biggest purchases that most people will make in their lifetime. I don't take that lightly, like even for myself. And I'm not, I see some of these people get into some of these payments and I have anxiety. It's
Yeah,
like,
you and me both.
yeah, are you sure? Like, you've got a baby coming and oh, like, because I don't want them giving me that call 3, 4 years from now. Cause I went through this not with my clients, but I was around in 2007, 8, 9, and 10, and saw a lot of hardships. A lot of people out in the streets, they lost everything because they were told by whoever that, oh yeah, no problem. You could afford this. You could afford this, and 2 years later, they're short sailed or foreclosed upon.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of unscrupulous products back in those days.
Yeah,
Thankfully, that's no longer the
100%.
case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've seen a lot of different markets then being around that long. I mean, in this market, what are you seeing? Are you seeing buyers making any kind of mistakes on a regular basis?
I wouldn't say the buyers. I mean, now the difference between 2 years ago or 3 years ago till now is, of course, the buyers have more inventory to choose from. So I think that is good for them. But then again, they're looking at so many different homes, it kind of gets confusing as to what they really want. And sometimes I see them missing out on some opportunities because they're like, "Oh, I got all this time. There's all these houses." And then they miss out on the house that they want, and then they kick themselves in the butt saying, "Wow, I wish I would have that one under contract. I wish I would have gotten that house." So it's kind of good and bad, but the biggest issue right now is sellers thinking that the value of their home is the same as it was 2 and 3 years ago. That's just not the case. Every market is different. Miami, I mean, I've got agents from Miami to Fort Pierce. So I see the difference in areas. And what's happening in Miami is not happening in Stewart and vice versa. So different markets tend to react different. But I know here the prices have gone, I wouldn't say they've gone down. They've just gotten realistic because they got to the point where they were very unrealistic and people were outbidding each other just to get a home, especially during the pandemic. So that's over. So we're back to, I think, a normal market where you have to seller that really wants to sell can sell if they're realistic, and the same thing goes with the buyer.
Yeah. We talk about that often, right, Craig? But we say it. It's a market, even in our, well, we're in Broward. Yeah, I'm primarily in Broward and Palm Beach. It's normal.
Normal market, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, give me this market any day because
Yeah.
again, it's 3 years ago when I was getting 15, 20, 30 offers on each it was just crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts.
And now all those people are upside down because they did that. They paid a lot more than they're worth today. I see that, but yeah, I mean, as far as like mistakes are concerned, the biggest mistake is listen to the professionals that are doing this on an everyday basis. It's like I'm not telling you. I wouldn't. I'm not the type of person that's going to sell you this. The house is going to sell itself. Like I'm not a salesman. I hate when people say I'm not a salesman. I'm just a consultant that's going to tell you the facts, and then you're going to make the decision if you want to buy or not. But I got to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly because you need all that information so that when you sit down and you're in that house 2 years from now, you're not kicking yourself in the butt saying, damn, I should have listened to him. I bought this house with the solar panels and a roof that was 10 years old. Now I got it. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things. So we pride ourselves on we really give them the good, the bad, and the ugly. So they can't come back and say, why didn't you tell us about this?
And that's great. Are you seeing agents make common mistakes in this market?
Yeah, again, I think it goes back to experience. Find the training nowadays for new agents is little to none. I mean, there's some companies out there that, do a decent job in training, but for the most part, there's so many of these internet only type sites that, you sign up with and there's a broker for the whole state of Florida. You've got these pay one fee, $3.99 per transaction. You get what you pay for. So if you're a brand new agent and you go into a company like that and you're expecting that you're going to get trained, it's not going to happen. I mean, real estate is one of the 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 best professions to get in where you can earn as you learn. I mean, there's people that go to college that pay thousands and thousands of dollars learning their trade for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years before they could go out and make a penny. Here, you could go out and make money while you learn, but you got some of these agents, they're so worried about commission split that they want 80, 90%, but they don't know nothing. I mean, 50% of something is better than 90% of nothing, and you're learning, right? So that's, getting back to your question about what agents the mistakes they're making. I think it's that they're concentrating on making $1 million the first year, which I could tell you right now, unless you have a high dollar investor in your pocket, it's not going to happen. But you need to learn the business. You need to learn the ins and outs. You need to learn the areas and know what's going on with special assessments and, different taxing structures. And there's just so much to it. And I think that there's just not enough training out there for that.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that is true. Yeah, and I think one of the things too is going back to your persistence and training and knowledge. And Craig had mentioned initially that you're very very tenacious and you see things through to the end,
Absolutely.
and you got to be like all throughout that. And I think that like driving a deal, that's what you're kind of known for, and that's what you probably teach to your team. How many people are on your team, by the way, and how many
Right now there
buyers?
right now we have 8 agents and an assistant.
And what do you look for, Andrew, in team members? What kind of qualities are you looking for that would make a good team member and a good agent?
I'm looking for people that again are dedicated to what they're doing, mm, that have integrity, that are willing to take direction and learn, not come into business thinking that they know it all or that, it's an easy thing. A lot of people, I hear it all the time. Oh, I got into real estate so I can make my own schedule. That doesn't happen. You're not on your time. You're on the client's time. So my family has learned that in the 20 years when they say, well, we're having a barbecue Saturday. Can you come over? I'll let you know Saturday morning because I may have appointments in the afternoon. I can't say no. If my client says I'm coming up Saturday and want to see property or, I want you to come over and list my house on Saturday, I'm going to list that house. I'm not coming to the birthday party. I'll come afterwards. So those that think that they can make their own schedule, I think that's just like a false sense of reality in this business, especially nowadays where everything is instantaneous now. It used to be, I remember when my dad bought his house here in Stewart in 1976, he had to go to the real estate company and look through an MLS book for the listings. And then they went out and they looked at property. There was no internet. There was the newspaper, and there was some people that would list for sale in the newspaper. But if you wanted to know the market, you had to go to a real estate company. Now you don't. Now you could sit behind your computer and search, and there's 100 different sites that are sending you properties.
Yeah, the technology.
Yeah, and if you don't have someone that's gonna follow up and, you call an agent and they don't call you back, relatively quickly, they're on to the next agent. They're not gonna wait around for your phone call.
Yeah. It sounds like you really take care of your clients. It sounds like you really track everything. Uh, How do you have a good contact database management system that you keep in contact with your past clients? And
Absolutely.
how much of your business is from, your past client? You know what I mean? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, especially my personal production is mostly referrals now, being in the business so long. But yeah, I have a database. It's got over 16,000 contacts in it. That's constantly getting fed by different marketing things. But we send out monthly newsletters, and we have recipe cards that get sent out, and the normal, stuff that we do. But
Through snail mail or email? Just curious.
yeah, I do both. I
Okay.
have both. Some people like that in hand and some people like it digitally. So we have different touch points for different people. Some like one, some like the other. But it's still, a lot of people think that snail mail is dead. I beg to differ. I do a lot of community type real estate activity postcards that are sent out every 60 days, and I get a lot of listings from them.
So you have certain farming areas that you,
Yes.
I presume? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's still tried and true then.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the community I live in, I'm one of the top agents in the area, for this community. I mean, I've been on the board here. I've lived here for 12 years. I know the community inside and out, and people know me, but they like getting those, even if they're not looking to sell, it shows them all the listings, it shows them what has sold. People are interested in what their house is worth, regardless if they're selling or not.
Yeah.
So they get that, and then instantaneously when they think about selling, it's kind of a no-brainer. They just call me because they see me constantly on in the mail, and I have social media groups, pages for those particular communities. So
So
it's an
you dabbled a little bit of everything, it sounds like.
yeah, because there's different people that get their information different ways. There's millennials and then there's boomers, and they're totally different. Like I said, I tried to stop my recipe cards and I got phone calls like, where's my recipes? I had to start it again because there was people that were looking forward to those recipe cards. So we started them up again. I used to send out magnetic calendars.
For the refrigerator, right?
I stopped that and they're like, where's my calendar? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so I got some people that want those calendars are getting the calendars. Some people that want you got to satisfy all types of people.
And those calendars, do you send, I used to do those when I first got into business, and even as a mortgage guy, and I made sure I sent out like on first week of November, because I want to be the first one on the refrigerator.
Yep. Yeah. I sent them out in October.
Yeah, I did say,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Andrew, let me, so back to your team and coaching agents, you also have started doing some coaching for people even
Yeah.
outside of your team, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that a little bit.
So that kind of came about just by osmosis. I have a lot of people that are in the industry, title, mortgage, insurance, that deal with a lot of agents. And again, getting back to what I said before about agents really not knowing what they're doing, would give me a call and say, "Hey, I got this agent that has a question. Do you mind jumping on a call?" And again, I'm an open book. There's no secret to this. So I'm like, yeah, let's jump on a call. And, they would tell me what the situation is, and I would give them my take on what they should do. And it's been going on like that for the last, I don't know, 10 years. And I've been able to get some of those agents that I've talked to end up joining my team because they're like, wow, this is great. How can I have this all the time? So we decided the end part of last year that, maybe I should start some kind of training program or coaching program for those people that don't have the training and don't want to join a team, that they have the ability to maybe, have a weekly call and jump on a weekly call with me, or I have different plans set up. We were talking off camera, Craig, about the JVs that I've been involved in. Can I speak about that?
I think that's very interesting. Yeah.
So that's how that came about. So I had a mutual friend of ours, I won't mention any names, but would call me up with this, with questions about contracts and this and that with this one particular gentleman. And I said, I just don't understand, like, where's his training? And he said, well, he works for this company. It's very small. Again, they don't have any training, but he's a retired NFL player. He has a lot of contacts, very charismatic, very good looking dude, knows a lot of people, but doesn't know anything about real estate, but he's very business minded. And he got his real estate license and he's out there with these buyers, but he really doesn't know what to do. So, he would call, we would have like a group call, and he would ask about this and ask about that. And I helped him put together two multi-million-dollar deals just out of the friendship, just helping him. And, it came to the point where he's like, well, maybe we can work together. I don't want to join your team because I want my own brand. I want to build my own brand, but is there a way we could work together? So I got with an attorney. We spoke about how to do a joint venture thing together. And I worked with him for over 2 years. We closed, I don't know, $40-50 million worth of property down in Miami. We sold a $10.5 million penthouse in Miami. I was his coach, and like I was his conscience in the background. Tell him this. Let's
You
do
were you
this.
were
Let's I guess. So for him, it was great because he was the front man, right? He's got
yeah.
all the contacts. He played for Miami, not Miami. He played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He knew all the Miami Dolphins. I mean, this guy has the contacts. He just didn't have the knowledge and the ability. So I worked with him for 2.5 years to the point where he felt like, okay, I think I could do this. And I'm like, that's great. So we ended the JV, but he called me 2 days ago with a question, and I helped
Yeah.
him. Just I don't find anything wrong with that. I just put on a gentleman in Miami who's, ex, NBA player, same situation. Young guy, very he knows his stuff when it comes to his craft, but he doesn't know real estate, but he's so disciplined. I love this guy. He's very, very disciplined, and he really wants to learn. So we connected. We got, he's actually on my team. He decided to join Kai's down in Miami. And, we put a house under contract a couple weeks ago. He's going up to Jacksonville because his people are like all over. He's going up to Jacksonville and help out another guy that he knows in this industry. So I kind of thinking outside the box has led me to some really good friendships, good partnerships, and part of transactions that I would have never been a part of. We don't have $10 million condos on the Treasure Coast. So not only did I help him, but I also learned a lot about the area and about the ins and outs of Miami and things like that, because each market is just so different.
Yeah.
So all you NBA players that are listening to this podcast,
Right.
Yeah,
and
if you're
NFL players that are
right. If
devout
you
listeners to the South Florida Mortgage
right.
Report.
If you have the
Um,
contacts and you got a real estate license, I can help you
yeah,
a
that's
great
right.
deal.
That's right.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's so cool because you've got such a it's a win-win partnership between somebody that's got the contacts and then you've got somebody with the knowledge and the systems and the processes, and you put that together and everybody wins, including
Absolutely.
those clients. And it's funny, we have seen a similar type approach to team building in some other areas where more, let's just say, less glitzy, right? Where you've had somebody who was a former in law enforcement actually, and then they actually hired into their team somebody that was an active firefighter, and then they went out and marketed, and they got all these firefighters, but a similar kind of concept. So anyway, the idea that you can do that even without joining the team and doing a JV and everything like that, that's very, very interesting. And it's definitely out of the box.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, but
yeah,
again, it works, and like you said, it's a win-win. And I think that getting back to some of the mindset of agents thinking that they have to make all the money. Again, 50% or 80%, 75% of something is better than nothing. I mean, this guy worked on his own for a year and a half, never closed a deal. He did a couple of rentals, luxury rentals, but he wasn't able to kind of land those deals. And with me and his background and kind of steering him and explaining different, now we do this, now we do that, let's do this, let's work on that. I mean, he was closing deals left and right. So, you know, he wouldn't have never been able to do that. He probably would have been out of the business by now, quite frankly, because, after 2, 3, 4 years of not closing, you're doing something else. But, now he's still, I get his newsletter and it makes me feel so good that I was able to help him
that's
get to
great.
that point because he's a great guy. I mean, just because he didn't know real estate, he's a very sharp business guy. Like I said, he's sharp dressed. He's a good looking dude. He's going to make a lot of money, but he didn't have that mentality to say, "Oh, why should I pay this guy a part of my?" And I hear that a lot with agents that I interview. One of their first questions is, "What's the commission split?" It's like we haven't even talked about anything. I don't even know who you are and what your ability is. Let's get to that question toward the end, because by the end of the conversation, I may not want to work with you. Our ethics might not align. What you're trying to do and what I think is going to work may not work. So it's all about business. And that's another thing. I don't think realtors understand that they're in business for themselves. They come from industries where they get that paycheck every week. They have a manager, they have a boss, they have a training. Well, you get into real estate, you get to take a 6 hour class, or you get your license, and now all of a sudden you think you're going to sell luxury real estate and make millions of dollars. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, especially in this market, because we know the market's changed. Like you said, 2 or 3 years ago, the market was on fire. People were buying stuff,
Right.
they were outbidding, et cetera. So a little easier for a new agent to get in to the business. And now we're kind of back, like you said, to a normal market. It's more of like a professional market. So if you're not a professional, you're not going to survive, in this market. So let me ask you a question. The market, I mean, did you right now, would you say this is a hard market, or you say this is like a more professional market? And the people that are in it, like, they need your guidance. If there's somebody who is out there and like they got in it and like they're not getting anywhere, they really could use somebody like you, to train and so forth. But the market right now, you said before, it's more of a normal market, but is it a hard market? Like, what do you say about that?
No, markets are markets. I mean, I made money when it was short sales and foreclosures. I made money during the pandemic. I make money now. I mean, every year I've made more money than the year before. So and there's been several different markets, but it's how you approach it and what's your technique. And also, in real estate, you got to kind of have foresight. Like, you can't plan on tomorrow or today for tomorrow. In other words, you got to see, all right, what are interest rates looking to go? Are they going up or are they going to be going down? What's up with the values? Is there foreclosures in the market? You got to kind of project like what's going to happen, and then you got to set yourself up. For example, when I first got in 2005, anybody could sell real estate. I mean, I remember having agents in my office when I was training. They would go to a builder and there would be a guy that would put $1,000 on each contract and buy 10 homes in one day. No exaggeration. You know what I mean? Because they were all investors. So here's a guy that just sold 10 new construction properties in less than 15 minutes. Well, then the market started to change and, short sales started to come in. They didn't want to do that work. You know what I mean? They didn't want to do the hard. They wanted to just write contracts or bring them to the builder and sign that little referral form and just walk away. So there was people like us, like new people that were like, kind of like picking up all the scrap. I'll do that. I'll do that. When short sales first came, the first thing I did was take every course possible and every designation possible, to learn how to do short sales. You know who was my biggest client during that time? The agents in the office. They would give
They
me
they
all
didn't
their
want to
clients
deal with
because
it.
they didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't want
Yep.
to deal with it. So I would say, give it to me. I'll give you a referral. I'll take care of them. I had at one time, I think I had like 30, 40 short sales going at the same time, negotiating these deals. They came from other agents. I didn't have to market. I didn't have to do any advertising. They were coming to me because they weren't used to doing the work. They didn't want to do the work. And the next thing you know, you'd see them at Home Depot greeting people or Walmart because they just, they just couldn't, they refused to do it.
So in your opinion, really, it doesn't matter what the market is, whether it's a hot market, a soft market, a cold market, whatever. Because you said back up, you said you've grown your business every year you've been in the industry. So
Absolutely.
market doesn't matter to
But
you.
that's what I'm saying. You have to have some kind of foresight to say, where is this market going and how do I position myself? People worry about AI and all these things, and Zillow's going to take over the real estate agent. There's not going to be any real estate agent. Well, let Zillow tell you what's going on the special assessment that's behind your house that you're ready to buy, because they're going to put a highway back there. But Zillow's not telling you that because they don't know it. I
Right.
know it because I'm paying attention to what's going on in the city. I know what's happening. Zillow or all these online sites, they don't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
They don't have the area expertise to tell you, hey, this area is this area is that. The tax, there's just so much to it that people don't know and they don't explain it. The taxes, how do taxes work in Florida? That's one of the biggest things that I see when it comes to making a mistake. They think that the property taxes based on what they bought it for is going to be their taxes when they take over. And we all know that that's not the
Right.
case.
Right.
It's going to reassess. And in some cases, we're talking about triple and quadruple the amount that they were paying. And then, you guys deal with it, I'm sure, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
We
then all
tell
of a
them right up
sudden,
front. Hey,
they're
listen.
calling you up the next year. My mortgage payment just jumped up $1,000.
Yeah.
Your agent didn't tell you that?
Yeah.
Your lender didn't tell you that? No, they don't. They don't know, or they bought it from, one of these big box companies. They didn't explain that. They didn't explain on new construction that the first year taxes is only on the lot. Yeah, you only paid $1,200 because it was just a lot. Now it's got a $500,000 home. Your taxes are $11,000. Huge difference.
Yeah, we see that all the time. As a matter of fact, one of the things I do right now this time of the year, because coming up on March 1st, I'm calling everybody from last year.
Homestead,
Hey,
yeah,
did you file at homestead yet? So
yeah,
make sure you did it. You know what I mean? And
right. But
because it,
again, homestead is what, 50,000. That's not making a huge difference.
no, no.
You know what I mean. In today's,
But if they don't file it, they're going to be
but if
even
they
bigger
don't, yeah,
trouble.
no, I'm just saying, like they got to understand that the taxes are not straight across the board.
No, no.
You know what I mean? It's there. It's a different scenario. So when you buy a house, it's gonna a $400,000 house in a normal neighborhood in Port St. Lucie on one block is going to pay the same thing as another one 3 miles away in the same district, right? Just because that one says the taxes are three. I mean, I lived in my house in Port St. Lucie for 28 years. I had it built. I raised my family there. My taxes were like 2 grand a year. When I sold, the buyer was paying six the following year
Yeah.
because I had the homestead exemption and the Save Our Home. So I was, mine could only go up 3% a year. No one explains that to these people,
Yeah.
and then you get that frantic phone call the next year is, "Oh my God, not only is my escrow account upside down, but now I got to plan for the following year."
Yeah. No, we see that all the time, and
These are the things,
you got to educate the
that
buyers.
absolutely, absolutely,
Fine.
absolutely.
Definitely.
And there's one thing if I may touch on also that a
Absolutely.
lot of people don't understand in the state of Florida, and I don't. When I first heard it, when I first got into business, I was confused. So in Florida, there's transaction brokers and there's single agents. A transaction broker is basically the man in the middle, right? They could do the transaction on the buyer's side and the seller's side, but they don't necessarily represent or have a fiduciary responsibility to any of their clients. They're there for the transaction. We and my team represent our clients as single agent. And what that means is we have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for our client, whether it's the buyer or the seller. And to me, I mean, you wouldn't go sue somebody and use the same attorney, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me how someone would think a transaction broker they're not representing the client. So I know that we could get into a whole conversation about the difference between single agent, but basically, a transaction broker is exactly what it sounds like. They're there for the transaction. They're putting A and B together. There's no fiduciary responsibility. They have to treat everyone equally. But as a single agent, I can tell my client anything. If I talk to the agent, and this happens all the time, I'll call the agent and say, "Hey, I see you got it listed at such and such, but hey, what do you think we could get this property at?" Transaction broker will tell you right away, "Well, I know they wanted to list it high, but I think if you come in at X, Y, and Z, we could probably make this deal done." Can you imagine that? Like, they're just giving away the goods. But I can go back to my client now and say, "Yeah, the list price is this and that. But I talked to the agent, and if we come in at XYZ, we can get this deal." Or he just told me that it's a divorce situation or this, or he's giving away like all this information that I'm going to use as tools to negotiate this deal for you. You know, that's what a single agent does. Transaction broker, you can't do that legally. You follow what I'm saying? So, so that's one of the big things, and I think one of the advantages of working with myself and my team is the single agency aspect. Because believe it or not, most don't do that because they want to work both sides of the deal.
So, and just out of curiosity, Andrew, so if you have a listing and a buyer comes straight to you, what does that what
We tell them that we represent the seller
okay.
and that if they don't have an agent, we could do a no brokerage, but I don't represent you. I just need you to know from the very beginning, I'm
Right.
representing the seller and I'll write up the contract. I'll do whatever you need. And especially nowadays with the buyer broker and the commission structure has changed the game too. But yeah, I mean, I tell them up front, I'm looking out for the best interest of my client, which is this side. Same thing with the buyer. If I go into a home inspection and the seller's just blabbing away or the agent's blabbing away all this stuff, I'm going to use that to my buyer's advantage.
Sure. Good.
So
Good stuff.
what percentage of agents then are transactional versus single like you?
99% of the people are transaction brokers.
Really?
believe it or not.
And you're in that
Why?
one. You're in that.
Why? Why? I don't know of any other single agents in my marketplace, if that makes sense.
No, no, I
Peop
get it. And
People,
so
even people in my office don't even know what that, like, what do you mean single? Like, and I have to explain to them. I mean, this is real estate 101. You learn this when you get your license, the difference between it. And like I said, when I heard that, and then because when I first came into the market, you had to disclose agency, whether you're a transaction broker, single agent. And when I first got in 2 years later, they abolished that rule. You don't even have to let people know. You're assumed to be a transaction broker unless you state otherwise. So when we represent a client in our paperwork, it states that we're representing you as a single agent, and it explains responsibilities are come with that.
that's interesting. That's interesting. So go back to the scenario you said that let's say, you have a listing, potential buyer comes in, they do not have an agent, and they want to use you to write the contract. They can,
They can.
yes, but
Sure.
you're telling him, listen, my best interest, I mean, I'm looking at the best interest of my seller, but I'll write that contract for you. Is
Sure.
that correct?
Or you could do what's called transition to a transaction broker. You could tell your seller, listen, I have a buyer that wants me to write up the contract for him, and I'm a single agent with you, but he wants representation, but there is no representation. So I could either give him a no brokerage and tell him, I don't have any fiduciary responsibility to you, or we could transition to transaction broker. I know gets a little bit kind of tricky. That's why I
No, no,
want to get into it. But
I'm interested. I'm interested. And,
okay,
and if
so
you want to
so
talk
if
about it, we
my
want to edit
set
it out later. That's fine. Cause
no,
I'm curious myself.
so if the seller has to give me permission to say, okay, Andrew, I'll transition to a transaction broker. You could be a transaction broker for them, so you could get commission from them and commission from me. But anything that we spoke about is still confidential. Does that make sense?
You kind of, so you could get your quote unquote full commission, right?
You could, but most of the time, somebody when they know the scenario, they want their own representation.
Yeah. I mean, I had a past client of mine recently that she's bought a couple properties, and then her and her brother bought an investment property. They did not have their own agent, and they're thinking, like a lot of people who go out looking at homes themselves, like, I want to buy an investment property. I don't have an agent. I want to deal directly with the listing agent because I want to get a better deal. So now the listing agent's going to make more money. And they did. And that's the way they bought. And a matter of fact, they even used the listing agent's attorney. So in there, I don't, but I don't know behind the scenes if and the listing agent, you got their full 5%, whatever. But
Right.
really, they didn't have
Well,
anybody.
that's why most people do the transaction broker, but again, they don't have fiduciary responsibility to either party, right? They're there just for the trend. They have to deal
Transaction,
with
right?
both sides. If you look at the rules, you could see they have to treat both sides equally. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
no you can't have an advantage of one to the other. You follow what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
So
Interesting.
so but as a single agent, I could tell them anything, and I don't have to disclose. I have to disclose anything according to the state of Florida, materially any defects that affect the value of the house. Like I can't say I know that there's mold, but I'm not going to tell you. That you have to say per state. But I don't tell them. Like agents will call me, like, "What's the situation? What's the motivation? Are they looking to move it? Their motivation is they want to sell. This is the price. Well, what do you think they'll accept? I don't know.
Right,
Send in an offer, and
right,
I can promise you one thing, that I'm going to submit it, and
right.
I'll speak to my clients, and I'll get back to you. There's no, you know, I'm not giving you any tools to use against my client to say, oh, they own 3 houses, and they're going into foreclosure, so we could jump in there and get this for $20,000 cheaper. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a whole topic that I think really needs to be discussed more, but it's not. It's kind of like hush hush. And even the agents don't know the difference. Like there's some agents out there that are transaction brokers that act like single agents, and that's against the law too.
Mm.
They can't act like a single agent. If they know something, they got to tell me.
I didn't realize 99% were transactions. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that much of a difference. I know everybody does that, but I didn't realize
test it
that.
for yourself. Next time you talk to an agent, say, by the way, I'm just curious. Are you a transaction broker or you're a single agent? You're going to find that most people are Again, I don't know of another agent in my marketplace that's a single agent. I used to a few years ago. It was bigger than it was now. But when they went to this transaction broker, like as presumed to be a transaction broker, most people did away with it. I had a hard time in one of the companies I went to. They didn't allow me to be a single agent. I had to be a transaction broker, and I didn't go to with that office
Interesting.
because the other side of the coin is it's not me personally. It's the whole. So Kai's everything in a real estate company, any sales, any listings belong to the broker. So if the broker, Mike Pappas, through me as a single agent, anybody that works for Mike Pappas has to act like a single agent. Does that make sense? So it does make it difficult for other agents because it kind of ties their hands. So some companies don't even allow it. But if I'm coming to you, I want just like a lender. When a person comes to you, they want to know that you have their best interest in mind, right?
Right.
You know, it's the same thing with us. But it's presumed by the general public that, oh, I have an agent. This agent representing me. No, he's not. He's representing the transaction. He's not representing you personally.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Another quick topic I want to ask you about real quick, because the market's always changing and things change. The buyer broker agreement, how has that changed the market?
I think it was a great thing. And a lot of agents don't like it, but I think it's great because of the fact that I remember days where, especially back in the pandemic, where agents would send, like, for example, an agent in Miami has somebody that wants to move up to Port St. Lucie. They send their client to Port St. Lucie to go look at houses. So that client calls an agent. The agent spends all day or weekends upon weekends showing them properties, and then they disappear and you can't, you never hear from them. Next thing you know, the agent in Miami is sending in a contract for that client, and you never either not know about it or you have no, you have, I mean, you could go to the board and try to fight it, but you had nothing tying that buyer to you. Now we do. So it's, if you're going to buy a property, you have to sign a buyer broker agreement with me for a specific period of time, just like a listing. Anything that I show you and anything during that period of time, you agree to buy through me. I think it's a great thing.
You think it's weeded out some of the agents?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Interesting. Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's what side of the fence are you on? You know what I mean? At least the buyer, even the buyer for themselves know, hey, this person is going to be working with me. Is it consistent? Because what happens, like I said, each market is different. So you have a Miami agent that writes an offer up here. You could tell that they don't know the area because of the way they write the contracts. There's certain things that you do in specific areas here that you have to make sure you account for this special assessment or this CRA district or whatever it is. Same thing in Miami. I had to do a lot of research before I started, especially with multi-million-dollar properties. I wasn't just going to wing it. I had to do my research on some of those properties. So, but yeah, it would happen all the time. So now that kind of cuts it out. Now there's some buyers that are scared about it and they're like, well, I don't even know you. Why would I sign? I mean, it's, you got to
Yeah.
trust somebody. We can't no realtor could show a property by law without having that signed.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else you want to touch on, Andrew? This has been awesome.
No, I appreciate the time, and I love this format of just talking shop because I could tell by the look on your face that some of the stuff we spoke about, even though you've been in the business for several years, is kind of surprising because you don't hear my side of the story, my side of the transaction, because you're in your world and I'm in my world. And I think that, the audience wins when we can sit together and talk about each aspect of the transaction and how they correlate and how they differ.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
sure.
Just great information, great stuff. And whenever we do have a guest on, Craig likes to ask like one personal question about our guests.
No.
So I guess Andrew, like we can go a couple directions, but let's try just what's uh what's something about your in your personal life that people might be surprised to know about you that you enjoy doing?
Well, I already gave away that I'm law enforcement. Most people don't picture that or don't see that in me, so I can't use that one. Um, and I already told you I had a restaurant, so I can't tell you I like to cook because you probably
Do you
figured
still
that
have the
out.
restaurant?
No, I sold it in 2005. I maybe the fact that I'm a drummer, played in rock bands and different from rock bands to church music to country music to different things. I've
Our
always
prior
been
guest was a drummer as well. So,
yeah. So I
matter
start.
matter of fact, I should have you on my other podcast. I do an 80s music podcast, as a matter
Oh
of
my
fact.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
was like, I
So
knew you were a
All right.
drummer, Andrew.
Who's
yeah,
your favorite? Who's your favorite drummer?
I don't have a particular favorite. I mean, I like Neil Peart, but
Yeah.
everybody does. But you know, I like all kinds of music. I mean, like I said, I played everything from disco to heavy metal to gospel music for churches. So I just enjoy playing.
Do you still
I
play?
wish no, I don't have the time. I wish I did.
So it's funny because the other gentleman was Representative Chip Lamarca we had on, and he's a drummer, and I asked him
Right.
the same thing. So I'll ask you since, and I didn't know this is where this was going to go. So do you know what Drumeo is on YouTube?
No.
So there's a channel on YouTube, Drumeo, and they have you can check it out. But it's like something I watch, even though I'm not a drummer. I watch it. They have these famous drummers on, and they'll play them a song that they've never heard before without the drums in it, and then just let them
Yeah,
do it,
yeah. I've
make
heard of
up the
that now that you
drums
said that.
as
Yeah.
as they go, and it's I don't know. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
I love it. So anyway, we'll have
Well,
to have you back on one of these days, and and we can ask you. You have to do some homework and watch some of that. But I
Yeah.
didn't know you were a drummer. Cool.
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I wish I had the time to do it again, but I probably will at some point. But yeah, it's always been a passion of mine since I
that's
was a
very
kid.
cool. I've dabbled in drums in the past and stuff, and I bought an electronic set about 15 years ago. It just wasn't the same as hitting a regular set.
No,
I sold it.
I live in a townhouse, so my professional set is still in storage. I mean, I bought an electronic set, but it just the feel isn't there, the sound isn't there. You're bouncing off of rubber and
Yeah.
it's
I
just
couldn't get into it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just not the same. I have a drum pad over there that sometimes I'll just pull over and just kind of, stress out on,
Sure.
play some licks on it and stuff like that. But there's nothing like sitting behind my Tama, and just wailing on it. But I can't do that here in the townhouse.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on. And for anyone
Thank
who's
you.
listening on the Treasure Coast and wants to work with someone who treats the transaction like a mission critical transaction, where can they find you, Andrew?
Well, my cell phone, 772-285-8702. You can find me on all social media, just Andrew Sesta. Instagram, Facebook and all that. My website, eastcoastfloridarealestate.com. And I work at the Kai's company. And yeah, just, give me a ring if I can help out. If I can, agents as well. If you have questions that I can help you with, you don't have to sign on to a program. If you just got a quick question or you want bounce something off, I'm an open book. I'm one of those guys that, I don't mind sharing. I like to share and I like to see people be successful. So give me a ring and you guys too. If you come across an agent or someone that just needs some advice or, something like that, let's connect.
That's awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Well,
Thank you so much for doing this, Andrew.
I
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
thanks for having.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being on, and thank you for tuning into the South Florida Mortgage Report. Remember, if you're ever looking to buy, refinance, sell a home, buy a home, I'd love to hear from you. Click like, click subscribe, and Andrew, once again, just a pleasure speaking with you, getting to know you, and really
You too.
appreciate your
Thank
time
you.
today.
Thank you.
All right, guys.